Off the northwestern coast of India, beneath the murky green waters of the Arabian Sea, lies what many believe to be one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries in human history: the submerged ruins of Dwarka, a city that Hindu scripture describes as the legendary capital of the god Krishna, a place of towering walls, golden palaces, divine grandeur, and a harbor so vast that it could shelter thousands of ships at once. A city said to have been built by the divine architect Vishwakarma himself at Krishna's request, constructed in a single night on land reclaimed from the sea. And yet what makes this story so profoundly compelling is not merely the mythology, as rich and breathtaking as that mythology is, but the fact that marine archaeologists diving off the coast of modern-day Dwarka in Gujarat, India, have actually found something down there: stone walls, geometric foundations, anchors, pottery shards, large grid-like structures resting on the seabed at depths of up to 40 meters, physical objects in the physical world that refuse to be explained away by skeptics as easily as one might hope. And these finds, first brought to serious scientific attention by the National Institute of Oceanography of India in a series of expeditions beginning in the 1980s under the leadership of marine archaeologist S.R. Rao, have set off one of the most heated, most fascinating, and most spiritually charged debates in the entire world of archaeology. Because on one side you have researchers who argue that what lies beneath those waves is irrefutable evidence of a highly advanced Bronze Age civilization that was swallowed by dramatically rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age, somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 years ago, a timeline that would not merely adjust, but would fundamentally and dramatically rewrite our understanding of when complex urban civilization first emerged in South Asia and possibly on Earth itself, pushing back the clock of human sophistication by thousands of years beyond what the textbooks currently teach. And on the other side, you have skeptics who caution, and their caution is scientifically legitimate, that natural geological formations can and do mimic architectural structures with stunning fidelity, that the dating of artifacts recovered from the Dwarka site is inconsistent and vigorously contested, that the underwater visibility in that region is poor, and the conditions for excavation are difficult, and that in archaeology, as in all science, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. But what is remarkable, and what even the most committed skeptics concede, is that something is absolutely down there, something ancient, something that at absolute minimum confirms that this stretch of Indian coastline has been inhabited, built upon, and culturally significant for far longer than the mainstream academic consensus had previously assumed. And the story deepens further when you turn to the ancient Sanskrit texts themselves: the Mahabharata, the Bhagavata Purana, the Vishnu Purana, all of which describe Dwarka in geographic and architectural detail so specific that it strains credulity to dismiss them as pure invention. Because these texts mention its precise location at the confluence of a river and the sea. They describe the city's elaborate layout with its wide avenues and residential sectors, and its magnificent harbor infrastructure. They describe the height of its walls and the materials used in its palaces, and they describe with haunting specificity the manner of its destruction, not by war, not by fire, but by the ocean itself, rising and swallowing the city whole following the departure of Krishna from the mortal world. And the fact that we now know from modern geological science that sea levels did indeed rise dramatically, rapidly, and catastrophically at the end of the Pleistocene epoch, climbing by more than 100 meters over the course of several thousand years, and swallowing vast stretches of previously inhabited coastline all around the world, lends a dimension of scientific plausibility to the idea that the ancient peoples who witnessed those floods, who watched their coastal cities disappear beneath the waves within living memory or within the span of a few generations, encoded the trauma and the memory of those drowned lands into their religious narratives, their epics, their mythology. Because human beings have always done this, have always transformed catastrophe into story, and the flood myths that appear across virtually every ancient culture on Earth, the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia, the story of Noah in the Abrahamic tradition, the Manu flood narrative in Hindu scripture, the flood stories of indigenous peoples from Australia to the Americas, all of these may preserve in mythological form genuine cultural memories of the genuine catastrophic flooding of the end of the last ice age. And what makes Dwarka singular and extraordinary within this global pattern is that it gives us something most flood myths do not: a specific, named, precisely located city with a corresponding physical site in the real world that can actually be reached, dived upon, measured, and investigated. And the investigations have produced results that are genuinely and deeply puzzling, that resist easy dismissal, including the discovery of a large stone anchor typical of late Bronze Age
Age seafaring cultures, carbon-dated organic materials suggesting continuous human occupation stretching back thousands of years, pottery consistent with the styles of the Indus Valley civilization, which itself flourished and then mysteriously declined around 1900 BCE, and large geometric stone structures that appear far too regular and far too consistent in their arrangement to be natural rock formations, structures that include what appear to be the remains of a fortification wall running for considerable distance along the submerged shoreline. And if you stand today on the steps of the Dwarka temple,
The magnificent 12th century temple that still stands in the living city of Dwarka, still crowded with pilgrims at every dawn, still ringing with the sound of bells and conch shells and devotional song. And you look out at the ocean, you are looking at a sea that has been rising for 10,000 years. And somewhere beneath the surface of that water, at a depth that varies depending on which expedition you consult and which section of the ruins is being discussed, the physical remnants of something genuinely ancient are lying in the dark, encrusted with coral, colonized by fish, slowly being buried under accumulating sediment year by year. And the race to document and understand those ruins before they are buried or damaged further is one of the quiet, urgent dramas of contemporary underwater archaeology, complicated by the practical difficulties of working in those waters, the poor visibility, the strong currents, the logistical complexity of sustained deep-water excavation, and complicated further by the political and religious sensitivity of the site, because for hundreds of millions of Hindus worldwide, Dwarka is not an archaeological curiosity, but a sacred city, one of the 7 holy cities of Hinduism, a place of pilgrimage that has drawn the faithful for millennia. And the idea that beneath the waves lies the actual city built for Krishna is not a metaphor or a symbol, but a literal belief held with absolute sincerity and deep devotion. And this creates a fascinating and sometimes tense intersection between the methods of secular scientific archaeology and the convictions of religious faith, because the devotees who come to Dwarka to bathe in its waters and receive the blessings of the Dwarkadish deity are not interested in carbon dating and sonar scans as primary sources of meaning. For them, the meaning was settled long ago by scripture. And yet, at the same time, many of those same devotees feel a profound vindication and validation in the fact that science is now confirming, or at least not disproving, what the Puranas have always said, that Dwarka was real, that it was built on this coastline, that it was swallowed by this sea. And this convergence of faith and evidence, this unexpected alignment between the testimony of ancient poets and the findings of modern marine technology, is perhaps the most moving and philosophically rich aspect of the entire Dwarka story, because it asks us to reconsider the relationship between mythology and history more broadly, to ask whether the ancient world's way of encoding knowledge, through epic poetry, through divine narrative, through stories of gods and heroes, might have preserved genuine historical information across thousands of years with a fidelity and durability that more prosaic forms of record-keeping could not have achieved, because clay tablets decay, papyrus burns, stone inscriptions erode, but a story told and retold across 100 generations, woven into the identity and the devotion of an entire civilization, can survive in living form for an almost incomprehensible span of time. And if the story of Dwarka is any indication, it may sometimes survive with enough geographical and structural specificity to actually guide archaeologists to the physical remains of the events it describes, which is a thought that should give pause to anyone who has ever been too quick to dismiss ancient religious texts as pure fantasy with no connection to the real world. And the broader implications of the Dwarka discovery extend beyond India and beyond Hinduism, because they point to a global phenomenon of lost coastlines and drowned civilizations that archaeology is only beginning to systematically investigate, a phenomenon that suggests the map of ancient human civilization that we have constructed from the evidence available on dry land may be radically incomplete, may be missing entire chapters of human development and sophistication that lie beneath the world's oceans, waiting for the technology, the funding, the political will, and the intellectual courage to find them. And Dwarka, with its unique combination of scriptural specificity, physical evidence, and living cultural significance, stands as perhaps the most compelling single argument for why that search needs to be taken seriously, why underwater archaeology deserves the same resources and the same urgency that we give to the great dryland sites, why the ocean floor should be understood not merely as an ecological environment, but as an archaeological archive of incalculable richness and depth.
And so the next time you stand at any shoreline anywhere in the world and look out at the water, consider that beneath every ocean, beneath every sea, beneath every bay and inlet and gulf, the rising waters of the post-Ice Age world swallowed coastlines that were once inhabited, that were once home to communities and cultures and possibly cities that we have never cataloged and may never fully know. And consider that somewhere beneath the Arabian Sea, in water that is not impossibly deep, in a location that is precisely known and precisely described in texts that are thousands of years old, the ruins of Dwarka are still there, still resting in the dark, still waiting, patient as stone, silent as the deep, for the day when we understand them fully, for the day when the gap between legend and evidence finally, completely closes.